Hello, and welcome to the webinar, 5 Steps to Organizational Resilience, How to Transform Your Enterprise-Wide Planning. My name is Eric Wallace with Argyle, and it's great to have everyone joining us today. I have a few administrative details to share with you, and then we'll dig into our presentation. First, we would like to thank Wolters Kluwer for their partnership with today's event. They've been wonderful thought leadership partners to Argyle, and they're committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience. Thank you again to Wolters Kluwer. We appreciate you joining us today. We welcome you to stay connected during today's event. For those of you who are active tweeters, please follow us on Twitter at Argyle Exec Forum. I also wanted to take a moment to touch on our content neutrality policy, which we've curated based on the feedback we've received over the years from our members. Argyle is very proud and protective of this policy, as it reflects our commitment to ensure the neutrality and overall value of the content presented at our events. We've worked closely with our speaking faculty to ensure that you receive a set of balanced and neutral viewpoints during the session today, and we appreciate our members' support of this policy. For those of you who are seeking CPE credit today, you must answer at least 3 polling questions and remain on the session for its duration. Polls can be found under the Polls tab on the right-hand side of your console, right next to Chat. Afterwards, if you're eligible to receive credit, you will receive an email with a link to your certificates. If you have any questions about CPE, please email cpe@argyleforum.com. Finally, and most importantly, please submit all questions that come up during today's event into the chat section of the interface. Before we start, I'd like to have our speaker introduce himself, then we'll begin our presentation. Jonathan, over to you.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Eric, and it is our pleasure to be here today for this Argyle Forum. Thank you for this space to share some interesting insights. Once again, for everyone, my name is Jonathan Laverance. I am the head of global product marketing for planning at CCH Tagetik, Wolters Kluwer. It is my pleasure to be here today to share some of the steps you can take to drive your organization towards the resilience it needs to grow and stay focused on the data that matters most, planning. So before we dive in, let's take a quick glance at what we're going to talk about today. I'd like to take you on a quick ride through a little CPM background and personal background. We'll talk a little bit about the evolution of data and why it's critical here, and some of the drivers behind it. We'll jump into 5 steps that your business can take towards resilience with some of those market drivers, and then wrap up with a few takeaways. And if we do this right, like Eric said, we'll have some time at the end for questions. Okay, then let's jump right in. A kid walks into a bar, a monkey bar. He says, ouch, and he realizes a need to anticipate things better, to change disruption, maybe a need for a Band-Aid. Well, to be honest, as it may come as no surprise, I was one of those kids, screaming along happily, full of naivete, just reacting to everything that happened to me in real time, never prepared, and struggling like every kid to change. And then something like this would happen, bang, ahead into a monkey bar, and transformation was forced on you, and you took that newfound intelligence, changed with it almost in real time, and became resilient again. Now, there's a saying that kids are resilient. Now, personally, I think that kids are just able to adapt and transform from responsive to resilient much more efficiently. And as a parent of 3 kids who are no strangers to change, it's always been kind of in front of me like that. And so as adults in business, when we think about resilience or the need to become more resilient, it's usually because we've found ourselves in a reactive place, having to play catch up, having to fix things or transform what we do, or change the way we do things in order to stay ahead of disruption. And when you think about it, gang, we find ourselves in similar situations, both in life and in work. So today, I'm going to come full circle on the subject of organizational resilience and some of the changes and transformation that can help to trigger the success you need as an organization and as planning experts to speed up processes, become more collaborative, reduce dependency on IT, and really take the steps to transform and grow your business. Now, when you hear the words transformation or change, those are really paths to resilience. And along the way, there are steps you need to take. But to put a quick framework around the constancy of transformation based on a need for resilience, let's take a quick look at how the CPM space has changed and innovated to remain resilient through the last century of planning. Now, as I'm sure most of you know, the history of CPM and its evolution to FP&A or CPM since its inception. But here's a quick reminder. In the 1920s and 30s, it was a pre-CPM era. Accounting as a formalized profession was in its infancy, all a very manual process. There was rudimentary budgeting and forecasting and even calculators, but obviously at that time the calculators were people. As we moved into the 1940s and 1950s, there was a shift towards integrating financial management, led by the invention of early electronic calculators and punch card machines. It was a time when the financial community began to put a greater emphasis on financial planning, risk management, and computerized accounting. The 60s and 70s were tumultuous and ushered in the advent of a more sophisticated financial technique, including variance analysis and the emergence of ERP systems. This was a time when mainframe and smaller computers allowed spreadsheets to revolutionize financial analysis. And with the dawn of the 70s and 80s came even more disruption and led in the early CPM era, led by the introduction of some of the first CPM software and supported by affordable personal computers. Now in the 2000s, we've seen the entrance of much more sophisticated CPM software, cloud computing, SaaS modeling, and in the last few years, even the evolution of CPM to extended planning, AI, blockchain integration, collaborative solutions, the introduction of deep data lakes, and extensibility. They all simplify connectivity and maximize actionable intelligence from robust reporting. So as we've jumped through these decades, clearly you look at these and a theme has emerged: transformation. It is a reactive cycle where the necessity of change is being forced by the innovative pace of technology. And now, with digital transformation on the forefront, financial leaders and operational leaders planning are yet again at a crossroads, at another opportunity for transformation. And at that crossroad, there are two paths. One is to stay on the same path. That path is easy and predictable, but not necessarily profitable. The other path, the road to change, will come with the pains associated with change. Now, it can become more volatile, but in the end, there is a reward. Now, and I know change is hard and scary. According to a recent CNBC survey, the fear of change is among the top 10 fears that create roadblocks to success for people and organizations. And to operations, procurement, finance, and treasury teams who are used to life in the back office, change can be overwhelming. But the numbers are in. And there is a need to change, gang. And in fact, a recent survey of CFOs came back with these concerning results. Of those CFOs surveyed by CFO.com, a full 50% felt that alignment with their operations organization was challenging at the best, with 48% saying that they were unable to align their planning to company goals, primarily because they were unable to capture all of the data at hand and utilize that in their planning processes to pull actionable intelligence from it, which led to 45% saying that they struggled to aggregate timely and accurate data into their forecasting and planning. But perhaps the most concerning data point of all in this survey was that only 14% of CFOs believe that their budgeting and planning efforts are effective at all because they are not getting the data they need to accurately project both near-term and far-term when it comes to their organizational success, aligning them to organizational goals, aligning them to financial goals of their organizations. So as we look at that, and then take a look at this source from McKinsey, it is absolutely understandable why 70% of CFOs are facing increased pressure to generate results in this current challenging economic climate. Now, financial leaders are looking for change, and the challenges that CFOs face in implementing digital transformation as they drive towards resilience include integrating with legacy systems, managing financial data, ensuring cybersecurity, building a skilled workforce, and managing change effectively. This threads into their business needs. Timely and accurate data is something that CFOs need to have. This timely and accurate data, they need it to make better informed decisions about their organization's financial performance and future plans. Number two is they're looking for increased efficiency. CFOs are under pressure to reduce the costs and increase efficiency in financial operations. Enhanced risk management. Gang, CFO needs, they need to manage risk effectively, both from a financial perspective and in terms of compliance with regulatory requirements. Well, CFOs are really looking for better forecasting too. They need to be able to predict future financial performance and adjust plans accordingly. And last, but by far not least, they're looking for improved collaboration. CFOs need to work closely with other departments such as marketing and operations to align financial plans with overall business objectives. Now, while these are by no means the completeness of the needs influencing change, these top outcomes are the ones which are really causing that change at the executive level. And by failing to anticipate this change, failing to anticipate these needs, organizations and businesses are failing. According to a well-known author, Brian Solis, in his report on digital Darwinism, there are organizations out there, 52%, frankly, 50% of Fortune 500 companies have failed since 2000. 50% have failed since 2000. That is an indirect relation to their own failure to mitigate disruption by becoming more resilient. These are companies we all know by the names like Kodak and Nokia, Sears, BlackBerry, Blockbuster, Toys R Us. They have all fallen down that rabbit hole by failing to change and transform in advance of greater disruption, by becoming resilient. So 5 steps to get to your resilience. We look at different ways of discussing this today, and I really didn't want to just give you guys another maturity model. So I thought instead of giving you a maturity model, I'd give you something even more helpful, a step in any direction to start moving towards organizational resilience. Because frankly, today, your organization should be poised for change. But any direction you go, be it extended planning, IBP, platform, data, tax, it's all critical to your resilience. And each one of these is a simple step away from where we see so many businesses are today. Now, let's take a look at that first step. By just jumping into one step, you can really make change. So let's look at that. Let's take a look at that first step. Whether you call it data or you call it platform, it's very similar. And in order to become more resilient, organizations need to move from disparate data and signals towards harmonized data. It's really a classic chicken and egg game here. Are you going to slow a project by stopping to clean up the data before you drop it into your new central data hub, or wait and clean it up once you've moved all the data to a connected platform. It can be a big lift, I recognize that, but the convergence of intelligence from all teams within an organization and the hygiene behind that can really transform your planning visibility to aid in your move towards organizational resilience. So data to platform to an elegant solution, like an analytic information hub, an area that brings in data and transforms it from dollars and data points, from units and volume, from go-to-market and funnel into data that's forecast and elegant for each organization trying to manipulate the data and gain actionable intelligence from it. Post the merger of Keurig and Dr. Pepper Snapple, these companies needed a unified enterprise solution to merge their data and provide a consistent financial view. They wanted to move away from on-prem to cloud to support collaborative approach to closing consolidation and financial reporting. And by adopting the CCH Analytic Information Hub as a component of new data and platform initiative, they got the single unified solution they were looking for, with flexible data and complex financial data reporting and flexible data loads in a stable cloud environment that allowed them a single unified solution maintained by the finance department. In the end, they saw a reduction in overall consulting and maintenance costs, an improvement in complex data viewing and data loads that gave the company greater resilience through deeper insights. That's why we chose this as step one, gang. By taking just something which is considered disparate data and moving that into a harmonized platform, businesses gain immediate resilience. Gartner calls that transition from FP&A upstream to extended planning and analysis. And that's considered to be the next big pivot for FP&A. At Wolters Kluwer, CCH Tagetik, we think that extended planning is the collaborative step necessary to help organizations truly capture value from their entire organization. So finance teams, if IBP is not being led from the operational side, then extended planning needs to take off from the financial team. Gartner believes that both IBP and XP&A approaches should be considered as two sides of the same coin, addressing a common objective, the continuous alignment of enterprise, financial, and operational plans. To talk a little bit about this, when Choice Hotels came to us, they faced challenges with an inefficient Excel-based process for budgeting and forecasting. The seeding automations, they implemented a solution that streamlined cycles by 50% and improved data access and transparency. The flexible solution accommodated business unit requirements and included a pre-packaged starter kit for workforce planning. Their stakeholders gained confidence through improved management reporting, intuitive dashboards, and drill down capabilities. In the end, they experienced increased efficiency, data-driven decision-making, and valuable strategic insights. Choice Hotels has already started on their journey by IBP, and now by elevating finance, they are stepping into an extended planning journey that will prepare them for change and create a new level of resilience in their organization. Now, sorry about that, gang. Let's back up here a little bit and talk about S&OP. If your financial team isn't quite ready to lead, talk about transformation and change and resilience. If your financial team isn't quite ready to lead the charge into extended planning. Another step towards resilience on that wheel I showed you earlier is transforming S&OP to IBP. In many cases, operations teams have major collaboration changes and challenges themselves, and many require different data to complete their planning cycles. It is important that each of them, whether it be supply, demand, promotion, planning, sales, HR, or marketing has access to the signals they are looking for to be able to distill data and insights to empower their team's success as a piece of a broader organizational strategy. Integrated business planning gives operations teams that next step into cross-departmental collaboration by converging intelligent data from each team, elevating that information to finance to gain greater insights that fuel success. It allows them to anticipate disruptions caused by possible outcomes uncovered by scenario planning. Now, if your operations teams are ready to take that next step towards resilience, this one would be my suggestion, SNOP to IBP, Integrated Business Planning. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Charles River Microbial Solutions produced products experienced high demand, leading to large orders from new and regular customers. To address their resulting supply chain uncertainty, they implemented IBP to align demand, sales, and operations data. And this enabled them to efficiently fulfill orders, manage stock, and adjust production. They reduced their back orders by more than 50% in 2020, and expiring inventory write-offs by 75% in 2021. Through supply chain planning, they optimized inventory and achieved an over 40% reduction in shipping costs for select products. Improved lead time analysis allowed them to choose cost-effective sea freight over air freight, avoiding rushed deliveries. So now that we've discussed three fairly well-known steps, I want to uncover a couple of more potential disruptions that you should be thinking about as next steps towards resilience. So we've talked about extended planning. We've talked about that as an evolutionary step from FP&A. We've talked about integrated business planning as an evolutionary step or an organizational step from SNOP. We've talked about a platform for data instead of just a data warehouse or brute forcing data to get the actionable outcomes you're looking for as a necessary step towards resilience. But now let's talk about a couple of things that are globally on the horizon here that you need to be accounting for in your next business strategy. So, tax. Tax has always been a challenge, challenging when it comes to planning. This is another disruption to prepare for. And this one, gang, is a big step. Another way of staying resilient across planning organizations is by taking the steps to accommodate known disruptions. Just on the horizon is a very large disruption called Pillar 2 tax. Pillar 2 tax. Implications of this OECD initiative are going to be felt by any company doing business in one of the 137 countries that have agreed to adopt this new 15% global minimum tax. If you sell a good or a service into one of those 137 countries, regardless of where you're located, you are going to have to pay the government of that specific country a tax on the sale. And while it starts at 15% in 2024, the plan is to raise it by 1% year over year for the next few years. Now, this is an opportunity to change, to anticipate disruption, and utilize the collaborative strength of your cross-organizational teams to get a step up on that transformation. This is going to be felt globally and can impact every part of your business across supply chain, across finance, across pricing, promotion, planning. Nothing is going to be immune from this tax. And planning needs to prepare by converging on this disruption before it hits. You guys have the opportunity to stay ahead of the curve and plan accordingly. Questions of offshoring and nearshoring, of transportation and logistics, on where to do business and how to do business, where to locate DCs, all of this should be on your mind. ensuring that you have the correct transaction logs and certifications, and much more. Now, last but by no means least of what we're talking about today, of these changes, is also a hot button topic for many countries globally. And like Pillar 2 taxation was proposed and agreed to in 2021. So if you're not already familiar with ESG and what that stands for, it stands for environmental, social, and governance responsibility. These are frameworks that represent the three main topic areas that companies are expected to report in. The goal of ESG is to capture all of the non-financial risks and opportunities inherent to a company's day-to-day activities. Now, reporting is typically done by applying one or more frameworks. The two most commonly used reporting frameworks are the Global Reporting Initiative, that's GRI, and the Sustainable Accounting Board's standards, that's the SASB. As this reporting becomes more and more mainstream, your company needs to adopt a strategy to account for the potential change in supply chain production, sourcing, T&L, and many other areas that can impact your team's ability to manage other projects alongside this global requisite. And while this may not be widespread in North America, this will continue to grow. It is likely to be adopted in North America as EPA policy tightens on multinational organizations around environmental and social citizenships. So planning for consistency here is going to be critical. Bringing this into your planning, offsetting financial expenditures in countries that are using this global minimum tax to potentially offset by reducing your margins near term, but being able to grow them long term. By taking these steps towards ESG, towards tax, towards S&OP, towards IBP, towards extended planning, and towards platform, your company has an opportunity to really stay ahead of the curve. So each one of these steps is a great way to get moving towards your organizational resilience. And each one will have exponential benefits. And while there's no way to be future-proof, honestly, gang, that's something that's made up by people trying to sell you snake oil. If somebody tells you their idea, their solution, their platform, their software is future-proof, frankly, they're lying to you. As indicated by that slide I showed you a while ago with Kodak and Toys R Us and BlackBerry, they all thought their transformation and their businesses were future-proofed, but they were not future-prepared and resilient. So let's talk about what we need to do as leaders in the space, because the future is worth it. And it's time to plan, to anticipate disruption, converge intelligence, and elevate finance. By bringing back a holistic platform for all data and planning transactions and computations to take place, this will really change the way that we approach planning from a operations and financial perspective in the future. So really think about anticipating that disruption. We talked about a couple of the knowns and a couple of the unknowns today. Converge intelligence. So when I say converge intelligence, I mean both from a planning perspective, make sure that all of your organizations are talking together from a planning perspective, but don't be afraid to utilize third parties to really help you understand what's going to happen and why. Utilize that intelligence to make the best choices for your business. And then elevate the role of finance, elevating the role of finance. Build those new models as an operational team, as a finance, as a planning team, as a T&L team, as a marketing organization, as a sales organization. Really make sure you're speaking to finance and really aligning with them to ensure that the steps that you're taking towards your planning are aligned with the financial goals of the organization. Finance can give you some great insights into what's going to work and what's not. It's called extended planning, friends. It's called IBP, friends, depending on whether it's coming from finance or it's coming from operations. And it is that change that is going to help you become sustainable in the future. Now, this is not just a pie in the sky thing I'm talking about. McKinsey & Co. put out a report recently that talked about how this great leadership has great ROI. By being in front of your competitors, you see a great ROI on this digital transformation within your planning. By implementing a strong digital planning solution, your organization will begin to embrace the cross-team planning initiatives. IBP and extended planning both are likely to help your teams in anchoring actionable intelligence into planning data to ensure you keep exceeding market expectations. But for those guys who want hard numbers, as I was saying, McKinsey & Company published this report that showed companies who implemented new digital planning solutions in 2021 and 22 saw a considerable uptick in ROI and EBITDA that validates the importance of transforming planning and planning ways to digital for the future. So that's a lot of stuff. I know I've kind of dumped on you here, but where do you begin? Well, seek collaboration from other teams. As I said before, do not perform planning in a vacuum. It is not just operations. It is not just promotions. It is not just finance. To get the most out of your future, preparing your organization to be resilient to change. Speak to the other planning leaders in your organization. Define those KPIs that you need to prove the ROI of what you're doing, and then set a course towards resilience by transforming your organization. Anticipate the disruption that's going to come. I talked about 5 things, but there's a lot more coming. Converge that intelligence, as I said, between different leaders and elevate that role of finance, as we discussed here just a moment ago. I gave you a wheel to look at. Knock down one of those and then start going after another. Find the low-hanging fruit, knock that one off that wheel, and go for the next one. As I explained, there's no such thing as future-proof. If somebody tells you that they've got a way to fix it for you, and it's future-proof, you're never going to have any more problems, they're probably lying to you. And don't wait for the right time, gang. Start your change today. It is the only way that you're going to hopefully stay ahead of all this change in market. So as you do all this, look for all of these ways to take your company from the now into the future. So where do you begin? I think Charles Darwin said it best. It is not the strongest of species that survives, nor the most intelligent that survives. It is the one that is most adaptable to change. Start making that change today. If it's not one of those 5 things that I talked about, look for a way that your company can adapt to previous disruptions, to coming disruptions in market, so that you are resilient for the future. You don't want to wind up like one of those Fortune 500s from the early 2000s, one of those 50% that failed because they were not willing to change. Make a plan towards resilience, stick with it, and get started. If you're looking for an organization to help you get there, please feel free to reach out to us at Wolters Kluwer or CCH Tagetik. We have been in this business for a long time. We like to say, when you have to be right, choose us. But there's another thing that I like to say. I like to say data in, value out. And we as an organization at CCH Tagetik will help you to make sure that your data is structured in correctly so that you receive value out from your input. Let us show you how to do that. If you've got more questions, and I'm sure there are questions in today, I am so happy to help you. Please feel free to reach out to me. Please feel free to reach out to anyone at CCH Tagetik. We're here for you. Thank you very much. Eric, back to you, man.
Thank you, Jonathan, for that insightful discussion. We'd like to transition to the second half of today's webinar, which is a presentation on budgeting, planning, and forecasting that will be led by Sadek Fahmy. Sadek, over to you.
All right, thank you very much, and welcome again to today's CCH Tagetik webinar on budgeting, planning, and forecast. Let's jump right into the solution and take a look. So here I have my CCH Tagetik homepage. All I've done so far is logged in with the user CCH and landed on my homepage. I'm in Google Chrome right now in full screen. You can of course use Google Chrome, Safari, Firefox, Edge, any HTML5 ready browser, and you can access CCH Tagetik. The other way to access CCH Tagetik is using the Microsoft suite of products. So that includes Excel, Word, as well as PowerPoint. Within those applications, we'll have some add-ins and some buttons related to CCH Tagetik, as well as 100% of the functionality related to Excel, Word, and PowerPoint. So you're not learning any new grid or document or presentation tool. We use the tools that you know. Back on my homepage, like I mentioned earlier, all I've done is logged in and landed on my homepage. The idea with our homepage is this is going to be personalized to all of the end users within the organization. So my homepage is going to have tiles that I need to access the most frequently in the application so that when I log in, I just have all of those areas in the application that I most frequently access right there at my fingertips. So for example, if I'd like to take a look at my performance dashboard, with one simple click after logging in, I get to my basic dashboarding capabilities that's fully interactive as I select and deselect items. The graph updates on the fly. I can jump from one tab to another, hover over the different states in this US map example to see my FTEs by region, jump from my HR tab to sales, cash flow, OPEX, and CAPEX. Within all of my charts, you can see an attached filter button and pivot button. So on each one of these charts, I can further filter the view or pivot to the underlying data behind the view. So for example, this expense by department chart, I have my cost centers here on my rows and my account groups stacked here on my columns. Again, I can interact with it or I can pivot to the underlying data behind that chart. So here, for example, I can further investigate and break down that data by breaking out my my cost centers here by entity. So this is a US dashboard. So I now have it broken out by my US entities. I can take my accounts from my page filters and drag and drop them into my row filters. So now I have my departments broken out by those account groupings that were stacked on top of each other in the bar. I can go in here and select and deselect items. So if I'd just like to focus on G&A and training and staffing, I can see accounting by G&A training and staffing, finance, G&A training and staffing, and all of my cost centers broken out by G&A and training and staffing. I can swap that view as well. So view it by account and then department. So just breaking out my G&A training and staffing by departments. And of course, I can leverage in-cell charting capabilities like my table bar chart or my heat map to see that my general and administrative expenses within New York, Chicago, and even Los Angeles are affecting my business the most. Back on my homepage, if I'd like to access my more advanced dashboarding capabilities, we can, of course, leverage our bi-directional ETL capabilities from within CCH Tagetik to allow us to send data from within our budget and plan to applications like Power BI, SAP application, SAP Analytics Cloud, maybe Qlik, any of those advanced analytics tools. And with that, I can simply click on my tile and open an embedded version of that application from within CCH Tagetik and start viewing some more advanced dashboards and interacting with them in a more advanced way. So I can swap between my versions here and view my different versions. I can focus in on a specific area. So if I'd like to focus in on New York, I can see the various customers or distributors and products associated with New York. I can swap over to a different view and take a look at my expense analysis. And here, I can select and control select multiple items if I'd like to, and I can see the table below updating on the fly. I can go into this table and highlight any specific item. I can drill down to the lowest level element of all of these items. So again, the ability to visualize and investigate any data that we'd like to right on the fly from within CCH Tagetik, from a basic dashboarding capability all the way to advanced dashboarding capabilities, are here within the application. Now, when it comes to planning, in the world of CCH Tagetik, of course, we recognize that a lot of organizations will like to start their budgeting and planning with a long-range plan. It might be a 3-year, 5-year, 10-year long-range plan. We have a customer that does a 50-year long-range plan within the application. So usually the long-range plans are done at a more aggregated level, of course, and then that upcoming year gets broken out at a more detailed level in the budgeting and planning process. So we have our long-range strategic plan, which we can house within the application, our budgeting and planning process, which involves more detailed workflow of tasks associated to gathering our budget and plan. And then, of course, once that has been released, it's usually outdated relatively quickly, and we'll go on and produce our forecasts, our rolling forecasts, as we go throughout the year. So if I'm an end user, for instance, and I'd like to start working on my detailed budget, or if I'm the owner of the budgeting and planning process, for instance, I can simply click on my budget and planning tile and jump into our process dashboard or cockpit here, where we get a 30,000-foot view of the status of our entire process as it stands across the organization. So in this example, and everything that you see today will just be an example of an implementation of CCH Tagetik budgeting and planning. In this example, we have a 4-step process. We're doing our revenue and COGS plan to start, and then payroll plan, expense plan, and balance sheet and cash flow plan. In this example, we're planning by entity within our organization. Of course, you can plan by entity, cost center, product, major product grouping, whatever makes sense to your organization. CCH Tagetik is a non-prescriptive software. So at the end of the day, you tell us how you want to plan and we'll integrate that into the application. It's not we'll tell you how to plan and you integrate your process. Not at all like that. Now, this 30,000-foot view is interactive as well. So if I'd like to see who hasn't started the revenue step, I can see who hasn't started, who's in progress, who is submitted. If I'd like to see the overall status of the payroll plan step, the expense plan step, balance sheet and cash flow, everything is fully interactive here so that I don't have to pick up the phone as the owner of the budgeting and planning process and chase people down to find out updates or send out emails and wait for responses. I can just log into the application, one click from my homepage, and I get that complete update, within a couple of seconds. I can see the entire status of my process across the board. Now, each one of these steps is detailed out into a workflow of tasks associated to the completion of that step. So I'm just going to maximize some real estate here so you can see the entire workflow. So this workflow of tasks, of course, we can view it in this graphical view, or we can swap into a list view for a little more information, like the last user that updated and the last date it was updated. And on this view, we can see a status indicator telling us that New York has started the revenue step. The deadline date, we see the time left countdown. Of course, the application is equipped with automatic notifications, so your users will automatically be notified as the deadline date approaches. And then with the workflow of tasks, of course, we can have multiple approvals. First of all, on the right-hand side, as you can see here, VP and CFO approval. And then we'll have a workflow of tasks associated to the completion of my revenue step. So that includes, setting my sales plan, updating my customer list. We've got a set of industry models because, of course, it doesn't matter what industry you're in. We can handle revenue planning for any industry across the board: manufacturing, retail, professional service, absolutely any industry across the board. This is not an industry-specific application. But if we'd like to precede our upcoming budget, just like we would be preceding our upcoming budget with our long-range plan, but if we'd like to precede our upcoming budget similarly, we can have a form, as we do in this case, where we get prompted to open a form in the web or open the form in Excel. We'll build forms using Excel and Tagetik capabilities, and we can access them using the web or Excel. The only difference is with the web, you get the modern look and feel. With Excel, you get the traditional look and feel of Excel. So here, I'll open my preceding budget form for New York in 2023. So the system, Tagetik, is going to reach down into the database right now and pull off all of the data associated to the template that it's presenting, as well as those filters that I just mentioned. So New York and 2023 budget. At any point in time, I can swap the view, so I can maintain this budget preceding form. Any other form in the application works the same way. Just given the rights, so long as I have the user rights, I can go to a different entity, select it, refresh, and the system's going to reach down into the database and pick up new data based on that new intersection on the database. So here in this preceding budget form, I have some global assumptions, revenue assumptions, expense assumptions, and employee expense assumptions here on the left-hand side. And on the right-hand side, I have a summarized view of my P&L with my 2022 actuals, 2022 budget, 2021 actuals, and my 2023 budget, which was populated by me selecting and making inputs in these different cells. So for example, if I were to remove these items, you'll see as I remove them, data gets updated and eventually completely removed. I have a blank 2023 budget to now start on. So here I can model out what my 2023 budget should look like, actually using driver-based planning. So I can set a reference scenario. And remember, this is just an example. You can model things out the way you envision it, and we'll implement it. We usually say, if you can envision it in, an Excel-like environment, we can create it within CCH Tagetik. And so here in this example, I have my end user selecting a reference scenario. So I'll reference my 2022 actuals, and then they'll select a baseline driver. Again, fully configurable, but we have our run rates for the year. So I'll select my Q3 run rate, and right away you can see this selection has a rapid growth rating. It's got an increased growth percentage of almost 40% and a nice high rating. I saw the system automatically populate my entire column for 2023 budget, as well as a 2023 budget coming in here on my graph for visual comparison. Again, I can go through and set up any settings that I'd like or any assumptions that I'd like all across these four areas to update the budget numbers that we're displaying over here for 2023 budget. And when I save and push this out to the budget, it's going to get broken out. It's going to get broken out based on this monthly split that we've predefined on the admin side of things. So back on my workflow, as I continue through, as our users continue through working through some of these forms, they'll open the form on the web or Excel, fill out the information, save it, and move along through the workflow of tasks and steps. So as I'm going on, if I'd like to enter my expense plan and work with, let's say, my operating expenses, here again, I have a view that shows me all of my workflow of tasks associated to my expense plan. This view is for New York itself. And actually something that I didn't show previously is we can have a different workflow of tasks for our different entities. So New York has one workflow of tasks for revenue. Chicago has their own workflow. Los Angeles has a different one. Toronto has a different one. Montreal has a different one. And then Rome has the same one as New York. And so we can have the same workflow across our entities in this example. We can have different ones. It's completely up to us how we want to implement it, and really up to the workflow of tasks associated to completing those processes or those steps. So I just wanted to quickly jump back and show that. On the expense plan side of things, again, I'm selected on New York here. In this example, all of our entities use the same expense workflow of steps, workflow of tasks. And here, again, if I'm going to enter my operating expenses or work with my operating expenses, I'll open the form on the web. I can navigate through my filters to select, in this example, the department that I'm going to be working with. So it's going to be the accounting department, New York entity, and my 2023 budget. So again, the system has this one template for my operating expense form, and based on the filters that I've selected as I enter the form, it's going to pick off that data from the database and populate my operating expense plan form. On this form, we've got some employee expenses here at the top coming in white. White cells are read-only cells by default. So as I try to type over this cell, I cannot make any changes. So these employee expenses are here for reference for our users who are filling out my operating expense form. Here in the fixed operating section, yellow cells indicate cells that I can edit. So I can go in and edit directly into those cells. And then at the bottom, I've got some other expenses in the form of allocated expenses, leveraging our built-in allocation engine. Travel expenses, leveraging some travel modeling, some driver-based planning that we're doing for our travel modeling, and then our marketing modeling as well. Over here on this form, like I said, we can do direct input into the cells. We can Control-C, Control-V. We can use, for example, a formula. If I want to say this equals this employee expenses times 0.005, I can do that formula. I can hit Control-Z to undo the formula. But if I don't want to go setting up my plan item by item, month by month, I can, of course, leverage the spreading capabilities within CCH2Gettic, spread things proportionally based on the numbers that are currently in there, flat across all of the periods, seasonality using 445, 544, any customized version, based it on a prior year scenario like the 2022 actuals, like we did in the budget preceding form. So I can just come into one of these totals, and when I select the cell in white, you'll notice that the cell now turns yellow because I've activated spreading, and I can actually spread on this value because it's a formula. So if I'd like to cut my spending on phone and internet for the year to 5,000, I can cut it to 5,000, and the system highlights the cells or I guess highlights the cell or puts a dotted line around the cell to show me what cells has been updated, and they've been updated using the proportional spreading method. I can come to the top of the house and say, let's say we're going to increase our spending, so bump this up to 500K for the year. Once I hit enter, the system's going to spread that 500K proportionally diagonally across all of my months and my accounts that I have laid out here. So on the exact same form, I can do bottom-up planning and I can do top-down planning. So you have complete flexibility on how you want to work within CCH2Gettic. If I'd like to add a new account that we previously hadn't been planning on, I can hit the plus button and add a new account right here. So it'll open up my accounts hierarchy. Only my income statement accounts can be selected. Only my fixed operating accounts can be selected. And those accounts that I didn't previously plan on, for instance, uniforms, I can now start planning on it if I'd like to start planning on it. Something else that we have in this form, hidden here in the section in the middle, is some grouped columns where I'm comparing my 2022 actuals, 2022 budget to my annual budget that I have planned out here in the yellow section. I have a variance of the actuals, I have a variance of the budget to give me an idea of how I'm doing versus those two versions. Of course, if I'd like to review some of these actual information, I have the ability to drill through to the transactional level details associated to that particular item. So here I've gone and drilled through on that item, and I can see all the transactional level details that feed into that auditing expenses item. So I see EY, KPMG, Edgar, the invoice date, invoice number, cost center, parent account, GL account. Any information that we'd like to collect from your source system, we have the ability to collect and have it here so that, you know, your end users don't have to go chasing down data if they're looking for answers with some of the information that they're reading. We, of course, can store line item details. So this column here, it's been set up to identify any items that have line item details inside of them. So our rent account has line item details where we can further plan. Our external training has line item details that we can further plan on. We have the ability to leverage row level comments. So row level comments, like every other tool out there, but unique to CCH Tagetik, is the ability to set up cell level comments. So for example, if I'd like to put a comment in here under my cafeteria area, I can enter my comments area, add a new comment, say, you know, we're starting CAF services, hit save. I could add an attachment here as well, browse my computer, add an attachment, PDF, video file, email, anything. And now I have a status indicator, a red status indicator telling me that there's a comment there. I can hover over that comment. I can see that Mr. CCH left me a comment that says we're starting CAF services. If there were an attachment, I could download that attachment directly from that cell. And that cell isn't, and that attachment and comment aren't stored on the form itself. It's stored on the database next to this 6,152. So this number is stored on 2023 budget for April, for cafeteria expenses, for New York accounting, and my 2023 budget. And right next to that number, we have this comment. So that comment will follow this number around the application in any other form. If it's aggregated up into the 65,000, aggregated up even higher, we'll be able to access that comment, report on comments, review the comments, and really maintain those threads within the application to be able to easily review and audit any changes that happen. On the travel expense side of things, I mentioned that we model out our traveling in this example. So going over to the travel tab, here in the top left, I've got some drivers. I've got a travel expense breakout for a graphical view, and I've got a trip management section where I'm actually planning my individual trips for the year with the ability to add a new trip on the fly here. You know, I just hit the plus button. The system's going to add a new section for me to add a new plan for the trip. So there's controlled flexibility to our reports. Our users can't go and type in on all these white cells. They can only enter and change data on the yellow cells, but they do have the ability to add new trips, add new ad hoc drivers. So we have an ad hoc driver here for per diem allowance. We've got global drivers that won't change or are managed at a global level, and I can't update them in this form. But here, for example, my first trip of the year that's planned is domestic airfare, $8,000 here, 29.2 is coming through to March. So if this turns into an international trip, this turns into $20,000 of airfare, $41,200 for cost in March, and I jump over to the expense plan sheet, and I can see that 41,200 there for me. So really, all of this information is available to me. I can easily leverage driver-based planning, top-down planning, bottom-up planning, all on the same form to give our end users flexibility on how they want to produce the various plans from within the organization. Now, if I'm an end user that has access to the employee expenses, I can come in here and use one of our smart links and connect to my employee expense plan area. So here, the system is going to pick up our HR planning form based on inherited filters. So the system automatically inherited the filters. Of course, we can have the user prompted to select the filters again. In this example, we have this form inheriting the same filters, but this shows how we do roster planning within CCH Tagetik at a first and last name basis, as well as at a positional basis. Of course, we've got customers that do one, we've got customers that do the other, and we've got customers that do a combination of both. We've got this hidden section here that shows some key KPIs like the number of active FTEs, the average salary, the average bonus, number of hires expected, and the total compensation plan for this particular, entity and department combination. So here, again, cells and whites, these are attributes for my employees, something that we're probably pulling in, leveraging our ETL capabilities and connecting to your HR system, be it ADP, PeopleSoft, or any other HR system that you might have. We don't want you to have to manage things in two different areas. Just manage it in one place and we'll leverage it. Of course, if you wanted to manage it within CCH Tagetik, you could, but normally we connect to that data externally and pull that in. And then, of course, we can manage things like the status of our employees from within CCH Tagetik. So if I'd like to transfer, if Melanie Dobbs is being transferred, I can change my status to transfer, select a transfer date. Notice that when I selected a different option other than active, I have yellow editable fields now for effective date and transfer to. So here I can just select in my calendar when Melanie's going to be transferred, where Melanie is going to be transferred to, and then as of September 1st, all of Melanie's data and costs and expenses are all going to be charged to Milan and no longer going to be charged to New York. I can see, for example, my employees' expenses broken out by detail here. So if I just hard click any one of my employees, I'm looking right now, for example, at Jane Doherty. Here I can see one FTE coming across for each one of my months for a total of 12 for the year. I can see a bonus coming in March, in June, in September, and in December. I see Jane's FICA, FUTA, and SUTA, all of the taxes and all of the costs associated to the benefits and the total cost of Jane as an employee. Again, we have the ability to change our filters directly in the view if we'd like. If we'd like, we can have them in the filters here and go back and continue with our roster planning after, we've taken a look at the details and are satisfied with them. As I mentioned, we can also do some positional planning within the application. So I can easily just hit the plus button here. I can add a new employee or a new position here. So let's say, for example, I wanted to add some managers. I'll add some managers, just hit OK. The system's going to add a new line here, again, for that controlled flexibility. I can plan by new employees. Let's say I'd like to plan 4 new managers. You'll see right away the system updates all of the data associated to this. It automatically populated the rate of pay based on the employee global assumptions that we're reading from the system. So here we're just displaying them for reference, but we can change the bonus issue date from semi-annually to one of our other options, quarterly, semi-annually, or annually. Back here on the roster planning side of things, I can set the hire date. So let's set the hire date to, let's say, August 1st. And based on the type of salary, obviously the cost is going to change. If they're contracted, if they are hourly based, the cost changes. If they're salary based, of course, the cost will all change. I can make any adjustments, dollar adjustments. I can add a bonus. So let's say 200K in bonus. All of the benefits information here. So medical plan, dental plan, retirement plan. And then when I hit save, the system is going to calculate all of the costs associated to my hiring of 4 new managers and push them along all of our reports, for example. And that leads me actually to some of our reporting capabilities. So we've looked so far on some of our dashboarding capabilities, our home page, some of our data input capabilities, and working with driver-based planning, planning operating expenses, roster planning, preceding our budget. So let's take a look at some examples of some of our reporting capabilities within CCH Tagetik. So here, going back into my, I went back to my form. I'm going to go back to my actual workflow here. So going back to the workflow, I'm going to take a look at some of our expense analysis. So here, I'll just run my expense analysis where I get access to some of my expense analysis reports. And let's say I'd like to open my operating expense detailed report here for my 2023 budget and my New York entity. I can simply open up that report, and the system again is going to pull off all of the data from the database and display it in this report for me. Again, you can see a combination of graphs, KPIs, tables, interactive tables, for example. So if I change my all cost centers to FP&A, the graph updates on the fly. If I change that to IT, the graph will update on the fly for me. I have the details behind that, operating expenses, all of the details here for me. I can expand the details for my 2023 budget to see the details of my 2023 budget. And earlier, I mentioned actually that our reporting is the same in Word and the same as it is in Excel. Going over to Excel, you'll see this exact same report open on the Excel side of things. Let me just get rid of my navigation pane. Of course, let me just open it back up. Here, we've got all of our reports that are stored in folders and subfolders. So long range plan, our annual budget, our reporting forms. Here I've got my operating OPEX detailed report open. Here we've got all of our forms stored on the database, specifically organized in folders and subfolders. I've got that exact same OPEX summary report here, summarizing all of my operating expense KPIs, graphs, same interaction with the chart. As I change around this drop down, the chart updates on the fly. I can go over to my details. I can take a look at my 2023 detailed budget, comparing it again, 2022 actuals and my 2022 budget, showing a total year in variance for those two. And then I have those details of the columns broken out here for me. So I've got January to December of my 2023 budget broken out there for me. So here, actually, I didn't mention on my rows, I have my employee expenses, variable expenses, fixed operating expenses, broken out by my department groupings. If I'd like to investigate further in any of this information, for instance, this 49,000, I can simply double click on that cell and I'll access our drill down capabilities within CCH Tagetik. And let's say I'd like to drill down on my account. I can drill into the account and the system will reach down into the database live and pull out all of the lowest level accounts that feed into that fixed operating expense line for my FP&A department that results in 49,767. So here's that 49,767 and all of those lowest level accounts that feed into it. I can actually take this drill down one step further, or maybe a couple of steps further. Here, I'm looking at my 2022 actuals with a total year and my variance column. The variance compares 2022 to 2023. If I'd like to see what that variance details are, I can drill down on the variance. But this time, I'm going to first drill down on my department, and then I'll drill down on my accounts. So when I run this drill, what the system is going to do, it's going to drill down and do that multiple drill down for me on the fly. So we can do multiple drills within one view. And here you can see my accounting department broken out by all of those accounts. My finance department broken out. Oops, I just zoomed out a little more. My finance department broken out by all of my lowest level accounts, and my investor relations department broken out by all of those lowest level accounts, giving me that variance of $102,000. So really, our reporting gives us a flexible environment to report on all of the details that we planned on so far today.
Thank you, Jonathan and Sadek, for an amazing discussion. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today for this excellent webinar. And enjoy the rest of your day.